warm welcome. Wednesday the 8th of December. We want to look at Omicron in South Africa, because where South Africa is now, the rest of us will be following on in the next 4, 5, 6 weeks as Omicron becomes the dominant variant throughout the world. So we're looking at things like clinical features, prevalence, resistance to vaccines in South Africa, because this is exactly what we are going to experience ourselves in the next few weeks. So let's start off with the clinical picture. This is from Dr. Coetzee, who's from the South African Medical Association. First to raise the alarm about the Omicron variant, actually. So she's been in the thick of it all the way through. She's saying that there's totally different symptoms. Well, they're not totally different. There are some commonalities, as we'll see, but there are different symptoms, a different clinical presentation with Omicron compared to Delta. And because it's different and often mild, she says it can be easily missed. So I think it's quite important to think about these clinical features we're going to talk about, have a high index of suspicion for them, and realise that it could be Omicron variant SARS coronavirus 2 that is causing our infection if we get these clinical features. So this is a real early warning for us. Body aches and pains, muscle pains, the myalgia seem to be prominent features. Also the headache and the tiredness. The tiredness tends to last for 1 to 2 days. So these are the predominant features of Omicron infection. The aches and pains, the muscle pains, the headaches and the tiredness that lasts for 1 to 2 days. A slight sore throat as well in some people. Not a severe cough, not a runny nose. So this is different from Delta. Not the cough, not the runny nose. And she says there's a decrease in patients coming into her surgeries, which means that the patients often don't feel the need to take medical opinion, which of course is great. If we can get better on our own at home, that's fine. Now, the vaccines in South Africa, the Pfizer and the Johnson & Johnson. Now, Dr. Coetzee is saying that in the hospitalizations, the vast majority, she actually said 99%, are unvaccinated. Now, we need firmer data on that. That's somewhat anecdotal at the moment. But it looks like the vaccinations, the hospitalizations are in people that are not vaccinated, which would justify the strategies of the United Kingdom and the United States at the moment, for example. Now, the symptoms in the unvaccinated are fairly similar, but they're just more intense, but not severe in that they're not getting really sick and they don't need hospitalised. So the body aches and pains, the muscle pains, the headache are all worse in those that are unvaccinated. They seem to have a much rougher time than the vaccinated, although it's a matter of degree rather than different clinical features. So interesting. Muscle aches and pains, myalgia, headache, excessive tiredness, probably a sore throat. Think, is this COVID? And of course test and behave accordingly. Now, we can use the lateral flow test. Now, what Dr. Coetzee said is the lateral flow tests don't work for the first 24 hours. So when you first get symptoms, the tests aren't coming up positive for the first 24 hours, but then from one day, from the end of the 24 hours up until the end of 5 days, they are coming up positive. So the lateral flow tests that we have in stock already are working. Becoming positive after 24 hours after onset of symptoms, still working for 5 days, and they are very accurate. So that is pretty useful to know that we are pre-armed with all these lateral flow tests already, which of course is great to know. Now let's look a bit about the prevalence of Omicron in South Africa now. This was a situation in September, so we see no Omicron at all, virtually all Delta. Moving on to October. Now in October there was actually a sliver of Omicron, but it's not shown on this graph. But again, we see nearly all Delta. Then of course in November, wow, what a change, Omicron 73%, and now it's actually even higher. So Omicron has been well on the go in South Africa since November. They are the figures. Now it's over 90%, as we'll see in a minute, but 73% in November. And that is the change between October and November. And the prediction is that is exactly what's going to happen in the UK, exactly what's going to happen in the United States. We're going to see a shift as dramatically as that from Delta to Omicron. And if the symptoms are mild, like Dr. Coetzee is saying, this is remarkably good news, of course. Now, it's too early to be definitive on that, but this could be remarkably good news because we just see here, it's not as if we've got Omicron and a Delta. Omicron has replaced Delta. And if it's causing milder disease, then that is surely a really good thing. Now, carrying on with the prevalence, just a little more information here. This is the latest now, the S gene target failure. In other words, if there's an S gene target failure, that means it's more likely to be Omicron. And genomic surveillance is consistent with this. So when they find the S gene target failure in the PCR testing, they are finding that the genomics does come up with Omicron. So it's a very good proxy. So it's increased from 0.9% in October, and now the average for South Africa, at the end of November was 96.3%. So it's completely taken over. Children under the age of 12 years accounted for 7.9%, roughly what you'd expect. And those 13 to 18 accounted for 6.1%. And here we see the changes. These are the provinces in South Africa. So basically, Gauteng 94.28% now. Omicron, KwaZulu Natal 93.5%. Limpopo 100%. So you can see that here. Western Cape, the hospitalisation data is a little late, but we do believe that this is accurate here. So basically we see we've gone very, very high in Omicron. And the positivity rates are also pretty high here. So up to 14% in Gauteng, which was, of course, was the original epicentre, indicating a lot of community prevalence of the disease. So from this we can say that there's a lot of community prevalence of Omicron in South Africa, and that it's virtually dominant now. I think we can say those two things. Now, this is the hospitalisation data from South Africa here. And I've given you the link for this. Now, I can't zoom into this, but we do see there's an increased amount of people in hospital at the moment, which is important to notice. There is some increase in hospitalizations. But I'm going to look at why that is perhaps not quite as bad as it sounds. So this is hospital data from South Africa. Click on the links for yourself. That site we've just looked at there is actually live data. This is a live site here, which you can access by clicking on that link there. So we do see a slight increase in hospitalizations. There's no question about that. And we are coming into South Africa summertime, of course, because they're in the southern hemisphere. So hospitalizations have been up. So what we're seeing is very high rates of community prevalence of Omicron, virtually universal Omicron as opposed to Delta, and a modest increase in hospitalizations, despite basically everyone in South Africa is getting Omicron all at the same time now. So again, this is likely what we're going to see, or we hope what we're going to see, very limited increase in hospitalizations, despite very, very extensive prevalence in westernized countries. And another reason for optimism here, this is actually this data here. Where is it? No, it's this data here. So what I'm going to do is zoom in on that because that's actually pretty important. So current ward of current admitted hospital patients. So these are patients in hospital in South Africa who have tested positive for COVID-19, for SARS coronavirus 2. Now, it's important to notice that these are hospital patients. All hospital patients who are admitted get tested for SARS coronavirus 2, of course. And of those that are in hospital now, 4,250 are positive. But the majority of those, from what we know, over 70% of those are incidental findings. They were hospitalised for other reasons. And the high rate of Omicron in hospitals at the moment is not so much because Omicron is making people sick, it's because there's so much Omicron in South Africa at the moment. And of course, the people that are being hospitalised in South Africa with Omicron are people from South Africa. So that's not surprising. So what we see here is this first one here. This is patients. So this is patients currently in hospital. This is patients in the ICU. That one's ICU. That one's high care, what they call HC, and these are patients in the ordinary wards. So this is the total number of patients here in South Africa who are currently SARS coronavirus 2 positive. So not a lot really when we consider the population. So 4,500 people in hospital, but we believe that about 75% of those or more are there for other reasons. So that means only about 25% of those are actually there for reasons of COVID-19, despite the fact that they are in hospital with a positive diagnosis. So altogether, 368 in intensive care in all of South Africa, 386 in high care, and 3,498 in other hospital facilities, just over 4,000 patients altogether. Now, this one is also really important. This shows who is oxygenated and who is not oxygenated. Now, this first one here, this is patients currently ventilated. So that's not good, of course, but this is for all of South Africa. And these are patients, there's 622 patients, so that's this slide, 622 patients in South Africa of people in hospital who require oxygen, who have got a diagnosis of SARS coronavirus 2. But most of those were admitted for other reasons, and a lot of them are on oxygen for other reasons. So we're seeing that there's a very low demand for oxygen, and we can see that on that screen there. Currently oxygenated 622, so it's pretty low. Now this is a live site. I can't remember what's on the next page actually. Yeah, the live site is so that's deaths by epidemiological week. So as we look at the current week, we see that deaths are up absolutely minimally, 95 on the week, very slight increase. So it does look like a very small increase in deaths, but it is very very small, and we can't really attribute why that is. So why is it that it's looking like Omicron is going to cause minor illness? Well, this is consistent with this new piece of research here. Now, this is not, it's a good piece of research, I've read it, but it's not peer reviewed yet. But it's about Omicron and the common cold. So Omicron has insertion mutations. Insertion mutation 214EPE. No, I don't know what that is any more than you is. It's basically a sequence, I think, of 9 of the bases that make up the genome. So 9 coding bases, and this one is from. But the thing is that this insertion mutation that's in the Omicron here is from the common cold coronavirus. Now this one here, H coronavirus 229E, that's one of the 4 coronaviruses that cause common cold. So we know that there's 4 common coronaviruses that just cause common cold. They've been with us for hundreds of years, or 100 years or more for most of them, we believe. So it looks like there's been one of these gene sequences from the common cold coronavirus has got itself into the Omicron variant. Now, the important thing about this is this common cold sequence here that's now in the Omicron was not in any of the previous mutations, the alpha, the beta, the delta variant of Omicron. This is new. And it could have been caused by what's called switching. So what would happen is here that this would involve genome of another virus that infects the same host. So basically, the SARS coronavirus 2 infects a cell. So here's a cell, and the SARS coronavirus 2 gets into that cell, and then at the same time, another coronavirus that causes the common cold also gets into the cell. There's co-infection, and the genetics of these get mixed up, and there's a gene from the common cold one, or a sequence from the common cold one, goes into the SARS coronavirus 2. That makes it more competitive, and it outcompetes the other ones, and the person starts breathing these out, and because that outcompetes the Delta variant, that becomes the common and the most common variant. So that's looking like that is what has happened. So it looks like this may well have arisen in a patient that was infected with COVID-19 SARS coronavirus 2 and this other coronavirus 229E coronavirus that simply causes a common cold. And basically, the SARS coronavirus 2 caught a cold, if you like, from this common cold virus, and made it much more transmissible, but we believe less pathogenic. It's plausible that Omicron insertions could have co-evolved in a co-infected individual, is what they conclude. Now, again, not peer-reviewed yet, don't know, but it would be consistent. That would be consistent with the data of less severity and less patients in South Africa requiring oxygen, And the majority of patients in South Africa who are testing positive for SARS coronavirus 2 being in hospital for a different reason, and that being a coincidental or an incidental finding. So that's all looking pretty promising. We can't be definitive yet, but every day that's going past, it's looking more definitive. If we're still being as optimistic in a couple of weeks' time, this pandemic could basically be over. But we're not there yet. We're still working towards that. Now, vaccination is an important one, so I'm just going to give a quick. I don't like particularly this idea that we have science by press release, but this is just come out from Pfizer just today. Now we know that I know a lot of us are a bit cynical sometimes, but we can assume that this data here is basically correct. Pfizer aren't going to lie directly on their website. I think this is fairly accurate data. Pfizer and BioNTech provide update on Omicron variant. Now, what they're saying is, and these are just direct quotes from their site. Preliminary laboratory studies demonstrate that 3 doses of Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine neutralizes the Omicron variant. So Pfizer is saying that you need 3 doses to neutralize the Omicron variant, while 2 doses show significantly reduced neutralization titers. Titers being the amount of antibodies. Now, this is only, of course, referring to the antibody titers, the amount of antibodies. It's not telling us anything about the T cells, which are probably the more important part of the immune response. So it's saying that you get way higher antibody titers if you've had 3 doses compared to 2 doses. We knew that already, but this is Pfizer confirming that. Data indicate that a 3rd dose of the Pfizer vaccine increases the neutralizing antibody titers by times 25 compared to 2 doses. So after 3 doses of the vaccine, you've got 25 times more antibodies. 25 times more antibodies. Now, it doesn't tell us how long these last for. And it doesn't tell us how important these are in the overall immune process in keeping us out of hospital. But it is reporting that as a laboratory finding. So fair enough, it's a massive increase. How long it lasts for, to me, would be the key question. I suspect it would start to decline. But I'm not being cynical. There is an important point coming. Titers after the booster are compared to titers observed after 2 doses against the wild-type virus, which is associated with high level of protection. So they're saying there that if you've had 3 doses of Pfizer, you've got antibodies against Omicron just as good as it was in the old days against the wild-type when you'd only had 2 doses of Pfizer. So that's encouraging. This is not telling us anything about the other vaccines. This is just from Pfizer. As 80% of the epitopes in the spike protein recognised by the CD8 plus T cells are not affected by the mutations in the Omicron variant, 2 doses may still induce protection against severe disease. So what the heck is all that about? So what you have here, if the CD, that cell there is the T. It's our friend the T cells, and this is what we call the T cytotoxic cell. The T cytotoxic cell is the cell that will directly kill virally infected cells. So if there's a cell there with all the virus in, this T cell will directly kill that, eliminating all the virus that's in it and stopping the infection. Now, so 80% of the epitopes in the spike protein. So the reason that if you think about this cell here, this T cell. So on the surface of this T cell, there's going to be receptors that allow it to recognise the presence of the virus, and they recognise these familiar spike proteins that we've talked about many times that are on the surface of the virus. So what it's saying is 80% of this spike protein is the same. So 80% of this spike protein will still be recognised. So the spike protein is the epitope, and it's saying 80% of it will be recognised by the T cell. And it's the T cells that mainly prevent severe hospitalisation and death. So what Pfizer is saying here is that 2 doses of the vaccine should still or may still protect against severe disease, because we know that the T cell response induced by 2 doses of the vaccine lasts for much longer than the antibody response, and it's the T cell response that is more long lasting. So it looks like the T cells, if you've had 2 doses of Pfizer vaccine, and I think we can assume it's probably similar for the other vaccines, although we don't know that. If you've had 2 doses of the vaccines, yes, your antibodies will go down, but your T cells, we are hoping, remain plenty high enough to protect us against severe disease and hospitalisation. But it's still advocating a 3rd dose to get the antibodies up as well. Then you'd have the antibodies and the T cells, which of course would be better. So that's what Pfizer is saying at the moment, and this is based on studies, of course. The company continues to advance the development of a variant-specific vaccine for Omicron, available by next March. And they can still bash out 4 billion doses of that. Let's hope the price comes down with such large production runs, if these are necessary. So that's basically what Pfizer is saying there. The antibodies are increased by a 3rd dose, but it looks like, while governments around the world are saying a 3rd dose is really important, it looks like people will still have a good degree, or may still have a good degree of protection against severe disease if they've only had 2 doses of Pfizer vaccine. So that's where we are now. Where South Africa is now, we are going to be, in my mind, no question about it, we're going to be there in a few weeks' time. And I remain hopeful that this is a less virulent disease-causing virus, which is displacing the Delta variant, which is nasty. Now, we still need to carry on with the precautions, because the increase in hospitalisations in Europe and the States at the moment are mostly, or nearly all, caused by the Delta variant. It's not gone yet. So we still need to be very careful. Right, now lots of people have been asking about, we don't do ads on this channel, but this is free. So lots of people have been asking about my books. So that's my physiology book. So that's all about the basic functions of the body there. And this one's all about disease processes, what goes wrong with the body when we get diseases. And it's got my sort of diagrammatic style, and these are available free, completely free. We made them free so that people in poorer countries can access them, and I'm going to put the link so you can download the free PDFs if you want some bedtime reading on all the basic physiology and pathophysiology, which of course is what all care professions are predicated on. So that was only a real snippet of the data that's coming out. Lots of following in governments and the popular press on this. Quite a bit of misunderstanding around it, has to be said, in the popular press, but that's my understanding of what's happening now, and I remain optimistic but not complacent. And of course we are following this really with bated breath on a day-by-day basis, because this could be a real problem over the next 3 months, or it could be that the coronavirus too just becomes an endemic common cold. So that's where we are at the moment. Feel free to download the books. You can print out the pages and the diagrams and colour the diagrams in, whatever you want. Once you've got the PDFs, you can do what you want with them. They're now public domain, as long as people don't resell them to make money. That's the only stipulation. But you can use those as you like. Okay, thank you for watching.